Welcome to Cook with Joy. I'm Joy Kelly, and I hope that this is becoming your favorite cooking show. It's my favorite cooking show, and every week I strive to give you some health tips as well as some fun ways that you can put food together that your family loves, that's all plant-based, that's gluten-free, and I hope you take on some of my recipes. I think they're pretty good. Today we're going to make some soup, and I don't care what season you're in, soup is always a really good staple to have around if you're trying to eat a plant-based diet. And you can make soup from just about anything. You can make cold soup in the summertime if that's what you like. And usually I use pretty much consistent ingredients, and we're going to talk about that today. We're going to make a Tuscan white bean soup, and this is a common recipe that you can find lots of places. I've been trying to test out other people's recipes, but soup recipes are so basic that really, if you have garlic, you have carrots and celery, you have some type of greens, some type of bean in it, and some kind of spice, you pretty much have the makings for a perfect soup. Now you could add onion if you wanted. Today, I'm not going to be using any onion, but I am going to be using lots of garlic. I'm going to be using these beans. This is the Fig Food Company. And what I like about their product is that they don't use cans, they use pouches. So you don't have to worry about any of the metal interacting with the actual product. So they don't have any recipes on their website. Actually, they have two recipes, one for pumpkin pie and one for something with beans. I think they should probably put my recipe on their website and use it. But I do love their product, and I've been using them more and more, and I love how easily the Ziplocs come off. So we're going to be using that today. We're also going to be using carrots, rosemary, crushed tomatoes, etc., etc. So let's get started. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to wash 2 carrots and 2 stalks of celery. Now I've already done this.
Thank God.
I know, really. Really the cutting up, when you're using vegetables, the cutting up of vegetables is what takes the most time. So we've got carrots and celery, and I hope that by now you know the benefits of carrots and celery. I mean, Bugs Bunny said it all for us, right? So we're going to get these going in the saucepan. And the first thing that it calls for is a tablespoon of oil. Now that's not much for a whole pot of soup, but if you wanted to, you could just do broth or you could just do water. I'm going to use oil, and I'm going to use this garlic mushroom oil just to give it a little more flavor, and I'm just going to eyeball a tablespoon of it into the saucepan. You ready? Ready, Derek?
I'm ready.
Here we go. Okay, so I'm just going to eyeball a tablespoon. I'm just going to kind of coat the bottom of it, and I'm going to get that heated up pretty well. And it says to add the garlic afterwards. Some people think you should add the garlic first. Always when you're using onions, you want to get the onions going before anything else. But I'm going to follow along with this recipe that I found off the internet, and I'm going to add the carrots and the celery next. Now they're diced pretty small, so they're going to cook pretty fast. And it just depends on how tough, or I shouldn't really use the word tough. It's not tough. It's like, do you like it to be crunchy or do you like it to really be soft? I kind of like both, so we'll see how this one turns out today. So I'm going to add that to the pot, and while that's cooking, I'm going to cleverly dice up 5 cloves of garlic. Now, 5 cloves of garlic, that's kind of a broad range, right? This is a clove of garlic, and this is a clove of garlic. So should I use 5 of these or 5 of these? Now I personally like a lot of garlic, so I use 5 about this size. And I've diced them up pretty small, like that. And then while the carrots are cooking, I'm gonna de-stem the rosemary.
Where'd you get that rosemary?
So in California, I think most places, rosemary grows like a weed almost everywhere, and lots of people use it as land cover. So I find this on every corner in town. I used to spend, anywhere from $3 to $5 for a package of rosemary until I discovered that it was way better. I mean, it smells so good, way better, and free. Free is better than $3 or $5, right? Am I right?
Every time.
Every time. So once again, this calls for a sprig of rosemary. So is this a sprig of rosemary or is this a sprig of rosemary? I'm going to go for the larger one because I find that bigger is better. Bigger is better, more is better. Let me just check on these carrots and celery real quick. So we're going to strip the rosemary off of the stem. And I think I've told you before about the medicinal properties of rosemary. It's been used for thousands of years to cure so many things. And we're going to use it today. I think you're going to really like it. It can really help with memory. It can help with your hair growing in.
How about my circulatory system?
Your circulatory system. You were reading my notes, weren't you?
I was trying to.
You were. So, I need to get more rosemary in my life. And in fact, I think I'm going to add this other stem too. I'll have to send my husband out to the rosemary store to get more.
Did he do it right the first time?
No, that's so funny. He went out and I told him where to go. It's just like a block away. I said, just, honey, and at our other house, we have a rosemary bush. And so I would just go to the front yard and get it. But we don't have one here. We live this is a high-rise condo. And there's a rosemary bush down the street. And I said, honey, would you go get me a few sprigs of rosemary? So he comes back with this plant that kind of looks like rosemary, but it is totally not. I think I have it in the garbage. I could show it to you. And I just asked him, I said, honey, did you smell this? I mean, does this smell like rosemary to you? And of course, it did not. But he gave it a good college try and he went back out and got some. Just make sure when you choose some rosemary that it actually smells like rosemary. Okay, so I think I've got that pretty finely chopped. And I'm going to add the rosemary and the garlic to the pot. It's going to be so good. And now the garlic.
I love garlic.
I know. And it's so good for you. I mean, if you like garlic, it's more than just warding off vampires. It so boosts your immune system, it's not even funny. And you can roast garlic, and you can also, I tasted this garlic once that was pickled, and it didn't even taste like garlic. You could eat a whole clove of it. It was really, really, really kind of crazy.
And the vampire thing.
And the vampire thing, definitely the vampire thing. So I've got this cooking. I'm going to turn it down a little bit. Yay. All right, now the next part of this is one of the most nutritious. All of this is nutritious, all of it. But the next part is the most nutritious. So kale is becoming the most popular thing on the planet, right? Am I right?
Becoming or is?
People have kale hats, right? I've seen hats that just say kale across the front. Like they have a fan club. So these are two different types of kale. This is Tuscan kale, which is my personal favorite. This is curly kale. Look at this. Now
Did your husband find that at the side of the road?
No, this comes off my tower garden. In fact, we should show a picture of my tower garden. Can we do that?
Yeah, snap your fingers.
Yeah? Can I snap my fingers?
There you
I
go.
would like to show a picture of my tower garden. So this is my tower garden. I've been growing with this for 5 years. It's an aeroponic system. It grows without any soil, and it just uses the same 20 gallons over and over again. It's awesome!
And you can fit it in a pretty small space.
Really small space. You can't grow root vegetables, trees, or bushes. Well, you could, but you couldn't get them out. But you can grow just about anything, and it grows in less time, and it grows bigger, and it's so easy. Even my husband can do it. It's so fun.
Your poor husband.
So that's the tower garden, and this came off of one of my tower gardens. Now, this is a pretty amazing piece of kale, right? This is curly kale. There's a ton of different kinds of kale.
I did not know that.
You didn't know there's a ton of kale?
I just knew there was just kale.
There's curly kale, Tuscan kale, Russian kale. I mean, you name it. There are and Russians know all about it. I don't want to even get into the Russians, but they know a lot about kale.
They hacked into our kale.
They hacked into our kale. But most people that use kale use curly kale. And I don't know why. For me, it's not great. So if you've ever been to a restaurant and you've ordered a kale salad and you go like this, you ever do that?
Yes.
So there's two reasons behind that. Number one, they've used curly kale. Number two, they didn't massage it.
Oh.
So when I know, isn't that great? So when you do kale,
Whoa.
you really want to massage it like this.
Lucky kale.
You really want to rub it so that you tenderize it. You also want to de-stem it and chiffonade it. So what do I mean by chiffonade?
I have no idea.
I know, it sounds like a chiffon, right? It sounds like a pudding. But what you're actually doing is you're cutting it into little thin strips. And when it's in these little tiny strips like this, you can break it down into, because kale is really tough, which is good. Like when you make a kale salad, it's not going to fall apart like a lettuce salad is going to, right? But it's also can be really hard to digest, and that's where you get that thing in your teeth. So you're cutting it in these little thin ribbons. And once again, I recommend Tuscan kale. Some people call it Dino kale.
That's what I call it.
Do you call it Dino kale?
Yep.
Yeah. And why do they call it that? Is it because it looks like Fred Flintstone or something? Like it looks like
a dinosaur tail?
Yeah, I think that's why they call it that.
And
Anyways,
tail rhymes with kale.
Tail rhymes with kale? The tail of the dinosaur, is that what you're thinking?
Yep.
You are, okay.
Exactly.
I don't get that, but okay, so we have all these ribbons now, and we're just gonna transfer this to the pot. Can I do this?
Yeah, hit it.
Okay, we're gonna transfer that. Yay, and this is gonna be awesome because now we've got carrots, celery, garlic, kale, tons of kale, and I mean, not only is this gonna really taste good, Derek, but it's gonna be really, really, really super good for you. And you know, what could be better is food that tastes really good, that you feel really good about eating.
That's the perfect mix.
It is. Next thing we're gonna do is add a can of diced tomatoes. And what's really fascinating is that there's actually more lycopene in canned tomatoes than in fresh tomatoes. I don't know how that's possible, but I have read that again and again, so I think it's true. I grow my own tomatoes in my tower garden, which I love, but when I'm making a soup, using canned tomatoes is way better. And
what's lycopene good for?
Lycopene is great for skin health, it's great for eye health, it's great for prostate issues for men. It's just a fabulous, fabulous, fabulous antioxidant all the way around. It's in anything that's red except my sweater. So it's in strawberry.
I thought that was fuchsia.
Yeah, it is fuchsia, but it's in strawberries, it's in tomatoes, it's in watermelon. And lycopene helps your skin to prevent skin cancer. So it helps to prevent burning. So if you're someone who's out in the sun a lot, the more things you eat with lycopene, the less likely you are to get sunburned. Fascinating fact.
I did not know that.
That you didn't?
I know,
I can't
didn't.
believe that.
It's like red chlorophyll.
So we're going to add 2.5 cups of water to this, and we're going to get this boiling. All right? And as that's getting ready to go, you might be thinking, well, what else would I like to put in there? Well,
what else would you like to put in here?
What else would I like to put in there? I'd like it to have, now I could have used vegetable broth instead of water, right? But instead, I'm going to use vegetable bouillon, and possibly because I have a couple boxes of it around that I really want to use. But when you get vegetable bouillon, make sure that you're getting either low sodium or no sodium, because otherwise you're going to end up with about 1,200 milligrams of sodium per cube. Do you know how many milligrams of sodium you should get in a day?
1,000?
Well, you should be getting the same amount of milligrams and no more of sodium as the number of calories that you eat.
Ooh, so 2,000.
Well, for you, you eat way more than 2,000 calories,
Probably.
I hope.
Probably.
Don't you?
Yep.
You better.
Absolutely.
How much you work out? But for me, I should be eating between 1,500 and probably 1,800 calories a day. I probably eat more than that because I'm cooking all the time. But so that means that I don't want to get any more than 1,500 to 1,800 milligrams of sodium. So a really good way to do that is to look at the can of whatever you're eating or whatever it is that you're eating. If you're eating fruits and vegetables, you don't need to worry about it. It's when you get to processed food. Even canned tomatoes. So on this can, there are 25 calories in it. So how many milligrams of sodium should it have, Derek?
25.
25.
1 to 1.
Yes, but this has 290 milligrams of sodium, which is not bad for canned tomatoes. I don't know why they add salt to canned tomatoes. They don't need to, but invariably they do. So you want to look for, this is pretty low actually for a can of tomatoes, but because it's got that, I don't want to use salted bouillon. So I've got no salt bouillon, and I'm going to add that to the pot now that it's come to a boil. We're going to drop in 2 bouillon cubes. And you know, bouillon's really great. I drink broth in the morning instead of coffee. I don't know how many of you ever do that, but I stopped drinking coffee regularly. I mean, I drink it once in a while now, but I grew up in a small town in Minnesota, and I had a paper route, as any entrepreneurial kid in the Midwest would, right?
What about in the wintertime?
In the wintertime, yes. So my mom would get up and she would make me coffee with milk in it before I would go out on my paper route, and I've been drinking coffee since I was about 8 years old. So about 4 years ago, I started following a lifestyle program called Transform 30.
I've heard of that.
Have you heard of that?
Yep.
I mean, now we've kind of changed it into Shred 10, but I stopped drinking coffee because I didn't want to stop drinking wine, but I couldn't stop drinking coffee. So I stopped drinking coffee and I started drinking broth. And when I travel, this stuff is awesome. You know, any kind of bouillon, you just want to look to see what's it made out of. Is it organic? Does it have, this is a vegan vegetable bouillon. I really like that. So I've added that to this mix. And we're just gonna let that boil for a little bit.
I've heard a lot lately about bone broth. What do you think about that?
Well, if you're eating a vegan diet, you probably don't want to eat bone broth, right?
Right.
And it's all about gut health. But if you make veggie broth yourself, you're going to get the same beneficial properties. Didn't we do a video on making broth?
Homemade.
I thought we did. So
Yep.
you can watch that video, and it really talks about how the onions and the herbs and everything that's in it actually heals your gut. You don't actually have to have bones of animals in it to make it work. So I'm just going to let this simmer for a little bit. And we want to add the beans as the very last step because the beans have already been cooked, right?
Right.
Now I could have used lentils or something that I had to cook in the soup. And sometimes I do that when I'm doing a long cooking soup. I'll put like raw beans in it. Maybe I've soaked them overnight, and I'll put them in and I'll let the beans cook as the soup is cooking. But I'm taking the easy way out today, and I'm using this package of cannellini beans. So not Tuscan beans, these are cannellini beans made by the Fig Company. And what's cool about these is you can just rip open the top, and you don't have to rinse them because they're not in a can, so you don't have to worry about that. I'm going to dump the whole thing into the pot. Can I do that?
Yeah.
Okay, there we go. And that's super simple. I mean, how fast was that? It was just a couple ingredients, really easy. Now, if you wanted to, you could serve it with some faux Parmesan on top. You could serve it with some gluten-free bread on the side. Put a little chili pepper if you wanted in. I like to always have some soup or chili in my refrigerator because when I come home in the middle of the day and I'm starving, or at the end of the day and I'm starving, your brain is saying to itself, what is the highest caloric thing that I could possibly eat right now? Because it's working, because that's how our ancestral brain works, right? Like, what's the highest calorie thing that I can do? And you want to order a pizza. But instead, if you know you have this soup waiting for you, you can simply heat this up and have it with a salad or just really by itself. Derek, you had that today and it was awesome.
I can vouch for that, yeah.
So really, one of my top tips for you is always have soup in your refrigerator. I've done some shows with you that we've used an Instapot, and I'll do a show again with an Instapot. Some people like to keep their Instapot or a crock pot. Remember those crock pots that we had when we were little? Keep those on all day long with warm soup. Personally, I don't mind cold soup, and I don't mind heating it up. But soup is one of the very best things that you can do, and I'd like to show you what this looks like because it is just really, really, really gorgeous.
And the crock pot makes your house smell terrific.
Yeah, I didn't have one when we were growing up. We were too poor for a crock pot.
Should have used your newspaper route money for that.
We had an electric can opener though. That was our top appliance. So can I show you what this looks like?
Heck yeah.
It's actually really, really, really beautiful. Can you see the colors? I don't want to get too close. I remember the time I did this on my own. I was doing tomato soup and I dumped it over the camera.
That was awesome.
I was not very good for my camera. Isn't that beautiful? Look at the colors.
Delicious.
I like the white beans in it. I like the orange of the carrot, the green of the kale, the red of the tomatoes. It's really fantastic.
I like the lycopene.
Oh, I didn't do this, but I would probably add some fresh sea salt and some fresh pepper to taste. You want to see how it tastes and see if you like it. Serve it up however you like it, but this will last in my refrigerator for as long as...
Till I come back over again.
Till you come back over again. But really, this would keep for at least a week, easily. There's no meat in it, so it would really keep. And I think you're going to find this a really good staple. And just keep in mind that you could take anything that you had in your fridge, just put a bunch of vegetables, put some garlic, some onion, some herbs, and you're going to end up with a soup that you really love. So just one more helpful recipe, I hope, from Cook with Joy. And we try to keep them coming. We try to keep recipes that are really fun for you to entertain with, recipes that will please your palate, but also recipes that will fill your belly and make you nutritiously dense, nutritiously healthy. And
Did you just call me dense?
No, I wasn't calling you dense. I was calling the food nutritionally dense. So that's it for this week's edition of Cook with Joy. I hope you tune in next week for our next episode. You never know what we're going to do next. Have a fabulous week.